So Sean Strickland just picked apart Anthony Hernandez this weekend, as he was able to get the stoppage in round 3. Now going into this fight, a lot of people, including myself, thought that it could be potentially a very close fight, primarily due to the fact that because of Sean's last performance, he didn't look quite the best, and you could see that Anthony Hernandez was on the rise. However, Sean shut everyone down, including myself, as he's looked the greatest that he has in a long while and was able to get a stoppage. There were many things that Sean did in this performance that allowed him to really excel. The first thing was that he really annoyed Hernandez constantly by peppering him with all sorts of shots. He hit him with jabs, teeps, which really did help him pick apart Anthony Hernandez slowly and bit by bit. Another thing that Sean did in this fight was he studied Anthony Hernandez before the fight, and he realized that the main strategy that Anthony Hernandez follows is to utilize the striking to enable the wrestling. And you could see multiple times in the fight where Anthony would throw strikes, but Sean's defense was on point, and when he would try to get a takedown so that the wrestling could be enabled, Sean's takedown defense was just too good and he couldn't really get him down onto the ground where he could do his best work. Sean also did a great job at targeting the body of Anthony Hernandez, as there has been instances in his career where Anthony Hernandez has been hit to the body and it just causes him to fail and shut down, as that's his biggest kryptonite and weakness, which, as you can see in this fight, really did help Sean win, as he was able to land that devastating knee to the body, which resulted in the downfall of Anthony Hernandez in this fight and led to the stoppage. The final thing that you noticed from Sean Strickland in this fight was that there was a bit of a mindset change. You can see from his last performance and you compare it to this one, it felt like the old Sean Strickland was back, the one that fought Israel Adesanya, the one that really goes after it. He truly looked like he was back in this fight, and he put on an excellent performance because of that switch in his mindset. Now for Anthony Hernandez, the reasons why he didn't really excel in this performance was because that the opponents that Fluffy Hernandez is usually fighting aren't really as experienced as Sean Strickland, who has been fighting amongst the best in the middleweight division for a very long time. Sean has been tested multiple times in his career in terms of the level of his opponents, whereas this was Anthony Hernandez's first big step up, which might have been too soon. The second reason why Hernandez really lost in this fight was because that he is quite predictable and he isn't as skilled. Now what I mean by this is that there are many examples of fighters like Chimaev who are very predictable and you know exactly what they are going to do. However, because of how skilled he is able to always get his opponents down onto the ground. Whereas when you compare it to Fluffy Hernandez, you can see that his style is to constantly push the pace on you and spam over and over and over again. That just really demonstrates that his skill isn't the best, as if you were good enough, you would have just taken your opponent down. But because he has to constantly keep shooting, it just shows that his wrestling isn't really as good as people think it is. Which in this fight was an absolute nightmare, as because he's quite predictable and you know exactly what he's going to do, he's going to use that striking to get to the wrestling and shoot over and over again. It just made him really predictable to Sean Strickland, and because of the lack of skill he has when it comes to the actual wrestling side, Sean had no difficulty in handling him, as he was able to have his good takedown defense to stop all the takedowns, which can break someone psychologically, as you're doing the best you can and your best isn't really good enough, and as a result you're just getting picked apart bit by bit. The final thing that really cost Fluffy in this fight was that his overall weakness when it comes to his body. Some guys are just born with just weak bodies, some people have glass chins. Fluffy, in this instance, has a chinny belly which really can't be hidden and is always going to be there for his opponents. Now what did this fight really show for Anthony Hernandez? Well, it showed that he's not really championship level yet, as there are some big weaknesses in his style which really need a lot of work on. Primarily that the weakness of his body and how predictable his style is with a lack of skill. He's talented when it comes to jiu-jitsu, but getting down onto the ground, he constantly has to push the pace on people, which may work on a lot of people, but if someone has good takedown defense like Sean Strickland, then it's not going to work as much, as they can just prevent all of your takedowns and keep you standing and pick you apart. For Sean Strickland, it showed that there was a perfect switch in his mindset, as he really went for it in this fight. And as I talked in my last video, the perfect game plan for Sean Strickland to follow was to pepper Anthony Hernandez with constant shots and to defend all of Anthony Hernandez's takedowns so that the fight doesn't really go into the ground. By also targeting the body of Anthony Hernandez, which was his biggest weakness, they could really slow him down, which allowed Sean to give Fluffy a beatdown similar to what he gave Sneeko. This fight showed that Sean Strickland really isn't washed and still is a big threat in the middleweight division. Now that being said, what is next for both fighters? Well, for Anthony Hernandez, he's got a lot of work to do. There's been a lot of weaknesses that were exposed in this fight, which he has to take some time to work on. He's going to have to get some wins again against a couple of other contenders before he fully gets another challenge at a championship level fighter, and in that fight he's going to have to show the improvements that he's made. For Sean Strickland, you could possibly make an argument that he's worthy of getting the title shot. The person that's most likely going to get the next title shot was going to be Nassourdine Imavov, but due to certain reasons, Khamzat and Nassourdine Imavov aren't going to be fighting anytime soon. And Dricus du Plessis recently lost to Khamzat Chimaev pretty convincingly, so that fight really isn't going to be made anytime soon either. So you could possibly argue that Khamzat should be fighting against Sean Strickland, as it would make a lot of sense. There's also a lot of beef with both fighters as they really dislike each other, so you can make that fight happen. But after hearing Khamzat's recent antics and his plans to move up to the light heavyweight division to fight Yuri Prochazka, I don't think that fight's going to happen anytime soon. So if that's the case, you could make the argument that you could make Nassourdine Imavov versus Sean Strickland for a title shot, or in the meantime, Strickland versus DDP for a rematch. You could get Sean possibly fighting for a title again if Khamzat isn't staying in the middleweight division. Also, another thing is that Sean Strickland has already beaten Nassourdine Imavov previously, and he did it on short notice. So if you make a title fight with Sean Strickland against Nassourdine Imavov again, and with this current version of Sean Strickland, I could possibly see him becoming the next champion of the middleweight division again. He could possibly become a 2-time champion. And if he fights Dricus du Plessis again, that fight, is pretty hard to call. Dricus has already beaten him twice, but who knows? This is the new version of Strickland, and he could possibly put on a great performance and maybe become a champion again. But anyways, Strickland has put on a great performance this weekend. He's looked great in a very long while. If you enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Let me know if you think Sean Strickland is truly back. Who do you want him to fight next in the middleweight division? Do you see him beating Dricus du Plessis in the rematch? Do you see him easily beating Nassourdine Imavov? And what do you think is next for Anthony Hernandez? If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you're aware whenever I upload a video. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.